Are you starting your microgreens journey? I was there too, and trust me, I learned the hard way. Today, I'm gonna save you the biggest pain by breaking down the biggest mistakes I made step by step so that you don't have to go through what I did when I started and the disappointment of seeing your precious microgreens with mold or not watered, super dry. There's so many different ways that microgreens may not grow that I want to break this down for you step by step. And also, just a little heads up, even though I'm talking about how hard it is to grow microgreens, it really is easy. And these are just some simple tweaks that will take you less than a minute for you to be able to start growing fresh, live microgreens easily and effortlessly. It's as easy as putting a cup of water in your microgreens every day for 7 days and you have fresh food. So in this video, I'll reveal one of the biggest mistakes that makes people quit altogether, but it's actually led to a major breakthrough. Hi, I'm Connor, and we have some exciting stuff coming up in the next couple months, so stay tuned because A Million Island Microgreens is going to start completely changing. And be sure to stick around to the end of this video because I have a secret tip that is right in your pantry that has stopped mold in my microgreens so many times. In fact, I was doing a comparison of growing my microgreens, one with this mystery ingredient and one without. One got mold and the other one didn't. So now let's talk about some of the biggest things that stop people from getting a successful harvest. The biggest thing is either overwatering your microgreens or underwatering your microgreens. So let's start with overwatering. Have you ever felt like more water equals more growth? It's gonna be so much better the more water I put on there. This isn't always the case. And this is especially if you live in a humid climate, something you're gonna have to watch. If you live in a dry climate, you'll have to watch it being underwatered much more. So diving into underwatering, the real key is controlled moisture. You don't want to have your tray look like a mud pie where you see all the water in there. You want it to be slightly damp. You don't want it to be soaked. Investing in a good spray bottle really helps, and also growing your first couple batches. The first couple batches of microgreens typically aren't gonna be the best, and you know what? I'll tell you a little secret. That is completely okay. That is normal. It's okay to have a first batch that didn't go well. Everyone has a couple that just aren't perfect. And the reason is you're learning something new. When you learn something new, it's okay to make mistakes. I still make mistakes, and I've been growing microgreens for 14 years. So don't worry if the first one doesn't go well, and it probably will. Microgreens are so easy to grow. They just take 7 days, and it's just putting a cup of water in your tray every day. The thing is, you don't want to put too much water. So what I like to do, and this is for after day 4, when you're out of germination, you want to make sure that you pour the water in, come back 15 minutes later, and just lift those 2 trays up. Check to see if there's more water in that second tray. If there's a lot of water, go ahead and pour that out. That'll save you a lot of challenge with mold and root rot. So you may know what mold is, but you may not know what root rot is. It's what happens when you put a lot of water near your roots and they don't have enough ability to breathe. And so then they get brown and they're not as great. It's not as much of a problem as mold in the microgreen stage because you can still eat your microgreens even with root rot. Just keep in mind you want to make sure that they're looking healthy and do your own due diligence. With mold, the likelihood of being able to salvage it is much less. The secret tip that I'm going to talk about at the end of this video will really help in the chance that that happens. And we'll cover mold in a separate part of this. So since we're on the topic of mold, we might as well go into that. I get asked a lot, is this root hair or is this mold? So root hairs are completely normal. Your roots have these little like fuzzy hair-like things. That's a part of your microgreen's root. That is normal. You want that. And mold looks very similar. And so it gets kind of confusing. Is this root hair? Is this mold? And one of the easiest ways you can tell is look closely at them. If they are white and they're more straight, they can kind of look spiderwebby, but they're really not. It's more just a straight, like down to the root or down to the soil. If they are gray with little black specks and they have a spiderweb look, then that is mold. And one of the easiest ways to tell is take out your spray bottle and mist the roots. You don't want to mist a lot, just once. That'll be enough to see this cool test. What you do is you spray it, and then the root hairs, if the root hairs will disappear, you won't see them. If it's mold, then it'll look completely the same. This is the easiest way to tell if you have mold or if you have root hair. And once you know this, then you can start treating it. One of the easiest ways to treat root hair, you want to get 3% food grade hydrogen peroxide. So when you get hydrogen peroxide, you don't want to get the hydrogen peroxide at the store. What you want is food grade hydrogen peroxide, and you can get this online. You want to get a dilution ratio that is 3%. What we do is we get one that is 12% and then dilute it at home. You want to make sure that you know how to do this, and there are videos on how to do that. And then once you have this, you simply spray it on the mold. You want to get it right at that mold, and that'll help significantly reduce your mold in your microgreens. This is more of something you do when you have mold. Don't use it as a preventative because it can damage your microgreens if you use too much of it. Have you gotten any aha moments from this video? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. I love learning what it is that you all are learning. And especially since when you share what's been going on or any questions, one, I'm able to do a video on that particular question. And the other thing, it lets me know what to focus on next. Because when you say, I love learning about how to prevent my microgreens from getting sick, or I didn't know anything about mold, then the next video I can do is specifically on mold or specifically on that aha moment. So let me know so that I can tailor my content so that you get the best, freshest microgreen content out there. And while you're at it, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any amazing microgreen content, especially if you comment and the next video features what you've talked about. All right, you live in a desert. It's super dry. How do you grow your microgreens? I used to live in Nevada and it was always super dry, which is completely different from where I now live in Florida, where it's super humid. And there is a difference in how you grow your microgreens. It's very small and it is different because you do need to check and make sure that you're getting the right level of moisture and humidity for your microgreens while also not overwatering them. So making sure they don't dry out, you just add more water. So on your little germination tracker that you get in your microgreen kits, you'll notice that there's 2 boxes on each day. The reason why is when you live in a more dry climate, during germination, you might look at misting your microgreens 2 times a day. If you live in a humid environment like Florida, 1 time a day is good enough. And one of the best ways to check and make sure that your microgreens are not drying out is to look at one of the dry coco coir pucks. If you're using coco coir like we do in our kits, look at that. See how it's a light brown? I'll show you what it looks like when it's moisturized. Doesn't it look completely different? So you have the dry one, which is light brown, and then you have the darker brown. You want to keep your microgreens at that darker brown color. Isn't that cool how your soil has a natural ability to just show you if it needs water or needs attention like that? This has saved me countless times in making sure that I get my microgreens the right amount of water that they need. So what happens if you miss watering a day? Because sometimes life is busy between work, maybe school, family, and the bazillion other things that get in the way of our everyday life. There are times where you forget. I've forgotten. And I've forgotten when I've grown microgreens for other people. Here's the cool thing. Microgreens are hardy. So if you miss just 1 day of growing microgreens, not 2 or 3, but just 1, then the chances are they'll be able to be revived really easily. I've had them droop so far down they're almost touching the soil. And when I put water back in, they pop up like nothing happened. Microgreens can be really hardy, especially when it comes to them being dried out, as long as you don't wait too long. You want to make sure that you give them enough water that they can revive themselves before they go to a place where you can't do anything. Moment of silence for all of those microgreens that have passed. So then the next thing, you want to make sure that you have a good lighting setup. Now, when I say lighting setup, I don't necessarily mean having a bunch of grow lights and a fancy growing facility. It can simply be next to your window. You want to make sure that you have ambient light Doesn't have to be direct sunlight. Just ambient light near a window will be just enough to grow your microgreens. In fact, when I started growing my microgreens, I got a small food pantry shelf and I just put it right next to my window and grew my microgreens there. Don't feel like you need to get grow lights and all these materials. Those are optional. However, one thing about this, if you have gotten new windows that are tinted, sometimes microgreens don't get what they need from the sun through those tinted windows. And it doesn't always have to look super tinted either. It can look like your regular windows and still not work for microgreens. I've only noticed it in the newer ones. So if that happens, worst comes to worst, it's super simple. You just get a microgreen grow light, or really a grow light in general. I've used LED shop lights for growing microgreens. You don't have to get super fancy. I do recommend LED because it's easier, more sustainable. And I'll link a couple in the description below, so if you want to start growing with the microgreen grow light, go for it. The thing about using a grow light is that you'll be able to get even growth throughout your microgreens, whereas when you grow next to a window, you have to be turning your microgreens about every day to make sure that they start growing evenly. Otherwise, they'll be growing to one side or the other, and that isn't always the best looking. However, it still tastes the same. It just may not be as full of a harvest. So experiment with this. If you have any lights that you already have, go ahead and test. See, will they grow with that? Will they grow with your window? The more you experiment and the more you have fun, the even better your microgreens are gonna be. Another challenge can be growing too many varieties at once. Now this can work, don't get me wrong. If you have the right seeds like broccoli, kale, collards, those are all very similar growing microgreens. However, if you start adding in radish, sunflower, peas, those all grow a little differently. And especially if you add in some herbs like basil or mint all together, it can be a little much for a first-time grower. As you get more experienced, you can have fun and play around with growing different microgreens at the same time. In fact, I love creating different designs with my microgreens, using like a green microgreen and a red microgreen, and creating like a checker pattern, a heart, you could do circles, a smiley face. The world is your oyster. So this isn't to deter you from never using a couple different bright microgreens at the same time. You just want to make sure that you use microgreens that are all going to be grown in the same time and use about the same amount of microgreens. In your microgreen kit with us, you'll be getting seeds that are about the same growing time, like your broccoli, oriental mustard, wasabi, brown mustard, turnip. Those microgreens you can grow at the same time in the same tray. However, one thing about this, all of your seed packs are measured evenly for one tray. So if you want to use, say, brown mustard and turnip, you'll want to use half of brown mustard and half of turnip for one grow tray. You want it all to equal out to be one seed packet. You don't want to add too much microgreens where then you have a higher risk of mold, and you don't want to add too little that you only get a couple little sprouts. And the other thing, there's so many varieties: radish, broccoli, peas, collards, amaranth, basil, sunflower, all these different microgreens. It can feel like, which one do I even start with? Start with some simple varieties, and in this video I talk more about the easy varieties of microgreens to grow that will give you an even better chance of success. And I like to say, you may not have a green thumb, but you have a microgreen thumb. You can grow these easily, and you've got this. If I could grow them at 7 years old, you can grow them too. Would you like to grow your microgreens with 14 years of microgreen experience? Head over to ameliaislandmicrogreens.com/101, where I show you how to grow microgreens, the health benefits, and a bunch of recipes with my 14 years of microgreen experience. I'll walk you step by step through the process and make it so easy for you to grow your microgreens right at home. That's ameliaislandmicrogreens.com/101. See you there. So now the last one. Number 5, harvesting too late or too early. It's pretty easy to tell when you're harvesting too early because either the microgreens have just gotten out of germination and they're not even green yet, with the exception of corn microgreens, or they're just little tiny and it's really hard to cut them because there isn't that much growing there. After day 7, if they're still kind of small, just let them grow for a couple more days. You don't have to eat them immediately. In fact, some days I let them grow till like day 8 or 9, and then I'll start eating them. And the cool thing about microgreens, you can let them keep growing as you're eating them. So after day 7, so go ahead and harvest what you're eating right in that meal and let the rest keep growing. That way it's super fresh when you're eating your microgreens, and you can't get more farm to table than that. Now, harvesting too late. This is something that's really important, especially when you look at some of your varieties of microgreens that have a thing called linolin. Linolin is what makes a plant like peas get stocky and really strong, which is great when they're trellising up. However, when you're wanting to eat the microgreens, it kind of has that woody asparagus type of feel. You know how it can be hard to crunch into asparagus? So when you're growing microgreens, such as peas, make sure that you harvest them by around day 10, because it can take even just an hour for that linolin to kick in, and then it gets woody. Now, for the exception of the microgreens, like your peas that have linolin, then you can harvest your microgreens at around day 14. By day 14, they're still green and healthy. Here's a couple things you want to know when you're looking for, should I harvest my microgreens or can I let them keep growing? 1, you want to make sure that they're not turning yellow. When your microgreens start turning yellow, that is a good sign that they're not doing well and they're gonna start being very bitter. So as soon as you start seeing it change color, go ahead and harvest them, because otherwise you're not gonna be able to eat them for much longer. The second thing you're gonna wanna look for is, of course, mold. If there's mold, just throw that crop away and start over. The third one is a true leaf. And what a true leaf is a third leaf on your microgreen. So after that point, they're no longer considered a microgreen, and they have a lot of nutrition. But once they get to that point, they're gonna start fading and they're not gonna have as much nutrition. So go ahead and harvest them, and that way you get to keep as much nutrition as possible. If you want to learn how to harvest your microgreens effectively, go ahead and check out that video where I walk you step by step through the process that will take your microgreens and will allow you to store your microgreens for another 7 to 14 days. That's right, if you grow your microgreens and you're eating off of them for 14 days and then you store them for another 14 days, that gives you 28 days to eat your microgreens. 28 days. I'm sure you can eat your microgreens in 28 days. And they're super delicious. You'll be shocked at how many different meals that you're able to add microgreens to. From soups, salads, smoothies, there's always something to add microgreens to. So drop a comment below. What's been your biggest growing mistake so far? We all make mistakes, and I love to say you either win or you learn. And so there's a lot of learning with microgreens. No one's gonna have a perfect harvest, and that's good because then you know what to tweak, what to adjust for your microgreens so that you have the best growing microgreens. It's a process. Just like with traveling, it's not the destination, it's the journey. You're gonna have fun as you go along and learn what it is that works best for you and your microgreens. So now, for the secret tip. I told you there was a secret mystery ingredient that stopped mold easily, and it's right in your pantry. Yes, you might have guessed it. It's cinnamon. The reason why cinnamon has antimicrobial properties, which means that it prevents mold. And I've been amazed adding a little bit of cinnamon, like a little pinch, into my soil as I've been growing microgreens right from the beginning, stops mold in its tracks. It is incredible to see the difference between growing with soil that has cinnamon and soil that does not. Plus it smells really good. And it's super easy. Who doesn't have cinnamon? So just go to your pantry, get a little bit of cinnamon, put it on your soil, and you're good to go. I also said a little earlier in this video that there was one mistake that almost made me quit microgreen growing, and that is chasing profit without a purpose. In this next video, I'll share with you how I went from growing and selling microgreens to creating microgreen kits to empower you to grow your own health in 7 days. So be sure to check it out, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. As always, stay awesome.